one. So if anybody's unfamiliar, Tyler Denk, who's up here and co-hosting with me, runs Beehive, which is a fantastic newsletter service that's coming out with a lot of different features and has been picked up by a lot of really popular accounts on here on FinTwit as well as elsewhere. Jack Rains is a incredible writer who I've had the pleasure of, because I am subscribed to some of Lit stuff. I've been seeing your stuff come in to my personal inbox and have had the chance to read it. So we're going to dive a little bit into them, but obviously we'll be chatting about money and other topics, which Jack is really eloquent at writing about. So with that being said, we also have Brian Hanley up here, as well as Iman from the Beehive team. I'm going to drop you a co-host as well. And we may also be able to get the Beehive account into here itself. If people do have questions, I think maybe in the second half of this, we'll bring some people up. But for now, we're going to get rolling with it. So I see John W. too. If John, you want to come hang out, feel free to pop up. So Tyler, I'll turn it over to you first if you just want to do any introductions in addition to that and give Iman a quick word, and then we'll get rolling with Jack.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you set the foundation there pretty great. But for those who don't know, Beehive is a newsletter platform aiming to create the tools for creators to scale their publication, create content seamlessly, and then monetize, whether that's premium subscriptions now, ads in the future, and a few other monetization strategies we have planned for later in 2022. So super excited to launch. This is our first Twitter Spaces, first of many, where we plan to do a weekly segment called Creator Spotlight, featuring a different newsletter that's crushing it on our platform. Jack is our first guest. He's been an early adopter of Beehive for a bit, active user, great feedback all the time, great content, works closely with Liquidity. So pretty pumped to have him up here talking through his content strategy and where he plans to take his newsletter this year and beyond. And then I guess I'll pass it over to Iman to introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Iman. I'm with the Beehive team. I'm currently working on our community management. So that includes initiatives like this one, making sure everyone is having a great experience on our platform, and just getting the Beehive name out there. So we're really excited to have you guys all listening today.
Perfect. Great to have you both on. Good to have Mr. Rich here with us as well. Always good to drop some wealthy knowledge. John, anything you want to say, or are you hanging out for a minute? All right, he might just be chilling out. Well, we appreciate you being here. And Brian, of course, from Bullish Studio. We got the Bullish Studio account in the crowd, and Brian up here on the panel, a man of many travels. Big idea, Brian, as I call him. A really good follow and contact to make in life if you are in the crowd. Don't miss out. Okay, Brian, anything you want to say?
Hi, it's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. Okay, we're bringing it over to Jack Rains. So, Jack, what really intrigued me and caught my eye is you have this great introduction, I feel like, when you write, the ones that I've seen have come from Lit. I know that you write a good amount of stuff outside of that. You have your own Twitter page, of course, where you're putting out content. Would love to, give this opportunity through an audio medium for you to give that same type of introduction as to, what your background is and what got you to this point to the audience, and then we can dive in further from there.
Yeah, sounds good. Wolf, thanks for having me, and Tyler and the Beehive team. Thank you guys for bringing me on as the first creator for this Creator Spotlight. Before I go any further, I'm going to do some self-advertising. If you want to subscribe to my newsletter, it is linked on my Twitter page. You can just click the Young Money link under newsletter and add your email. But for some background, so I was working in corporate finance right out of college in December 2019. I graduated, started working in March 2020 in Atlanta, Georgia, and COVID-19 hits, and I go remote my first week in the office. And like everybody else, I get bored working remote, and I start day trading SPACs because I saw after DraftKings went public through a SPAC, it performed pretty well. And long story short, I turned $6,000 into $400,000 in a Roth IRA, which is about as ridiculous as it sounds. Then I proceeded to lose about $120,000 in one day last August by continuing to trade SPACs when they obviously weren't performing well anymore. So needless to say, I'm no longer trading. But I started writing on Seeking Alpha because I realized that I could make $100 or $150 an article just writing about stocks. every stock I wrote about has performed like shit since I wrote about it. So don't take anything that I write about as investment advice. But that showed me that you can make money writing online. So then I tried to get a job writing for Morning Brew and all these different media companies, but I didn't have any real writing experience and nobody would hire me. So I just started my own blog on Substack initially, just writing about finance, money, careers, and a lot of stuff that kind of hits that midpoint between money and psychology. So not as much stock picks, but like how we think about money and the decisions that we make about like maximizing our time and money. I think that's a pretty important thing that we don't really think about. You know, we tend to focus on making every additional dollar, but not how to make the most out of those dollars. So I start writing this blog. I quit my job in August to backpack Europe because we got the return to office email and I just really didn't want to go back to the office. And then around this time, I happened to just DM Liquidity about potentially writing for him. I saw he had Exec Sum that had a big base and he liked my writing. And then, long story short, I do a lot of stuff with him now and occasionally I'll link a couple of my articles in Exec Sum. So I guess that's like a 2-minute summary of who I am, like my investment background, and then like what I'm doing writing now.
Yo, Jack,
Perfect.
real quick, do you want to mention your DM conversation with Liquidity when you reached out to him?
Yeah. So that's actually pretty funny. My first message to Liquidity had nothing to do with uh, finance. I messaged him back in June or July of last year and said, "Yo, your Spotify playlist fucking slaps. Like, I appreciate it." I just saw him share it on Twitter, and I was playing it at a party, and it was Liquidity Hampton Day Sauce. Highly recommend. Look it up. Um, but after that, about a month later, that was when I saw Exec Sum and then followed up with the writing stuff. But if I hadn't cold DM'd him about that and then telling him to put the Kygo Sexual Healing remix on it, I probably wouldn't be writing for him now. So anyway, always take advantage of sliding in the DMs. It's a great employment opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Any way you can get in that DM, I completely agree with you. Gets your foot in the door and opens up opportunity for what's next. And especially if you're offering a compliment or anything like that, really does do well. So you're writing right now a couple different spots, but the overall one of yours is Young Money. Some of the recent articles you put out, like Precedent Times and Perverse Incentives, Being Right for the Wrong Reasons. Very interesting titles going on here. What would you say is the theme? I mean, you kind of hit on it a little bit, the psychology here, but ultimately, when people come and they want to, why would somebody subscribe to you is basically kind of what I'm getting towards.
I'm not going to tell people how to make money, but I'm hopefully going to help people figure out how to think about their money is how I look at it. Because I think especially in the States, I imagine most people here from the US, the kind of workaholic culture of grinding, making as much money as possible, having a successful career, that's great. But if you focus everything on just making those dollars and not actually getting what you want to out of life, I think you miss the point. So I try to write about stuff that really just makes people think a little bit more about their money and their careers. And sometimes that's putting stuff into historical context. Sometimes it's talking about investment fallacies that can end up making us lose a lot of bit of money and lose a lot of bit of progress. It just really whatever comes to my mind that I think people should think more about, I then write about.
Okay, good stuff. So I'm curious, going back to that $400,000. So you make $400,000 off SPACs, lose over
Correct.
$100,000 of it a single day. What do you do with the
Yep.
rest of the money?
Right now, it is all sitting in the SPY ETF. I look at it like I still have over $100,000 that I made day trading when I was 23, and you put that in just a market ETF and don't touch it, and it compounds at 8 or 9% a year. It'll be worth about 2.5 million when I'm retirement age, and that's with no additional income contributed to it. So trading is kind of a zero sum game. If you're really good at it, you can make like unimaginable amounts of money. But if you're bad at it, you can blow all of your money. And I looked at it like with this big capital base I had, it made more sense to just invest that, let the market do its thing, and then focus more on developing other skills that I could use to increase my income, which now is writing. So write, monetize that, pour that money into different index funds, and keep going from there. So that's kind of my new strategy going forward.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, that absolutely makes sense. You can't go wrong with SPY long term. Certainly, the market has had this precedented move upwards from it. Okay, so let's bring it back into here. Ideal for you. I got to look at some of your 2022 goals that Tyler shot over to me, but would love for you to relay them to the crowd. You're somebody who has taken this new, I'd say, like golden age by storm, right? Where graduated back in 2019 and now have an opportunity to do something different, right? Not just grind as an investment banking analyst for 2 years, drop in a PE right afterwards, and do this. And you're on a very different course now. One, how does that feel for the mindset to be on a different course? I think a lot of people can relate to this in the crowd. And then two, ideally, next couple of years, what do you want to do with it?
So I think it's fun, first of all, like not having this fully drawn out roadmap of like IB analyst, move your way up, private equity, or McKinsey and Company, work your way up, then go work corporate for like a Fortune 500 company. I think that this whole creator economy space is evolving like in real time as we're watching it, and platforms like Beehive give writers a chance to make a lot of money doing stuff they like. If you have a huge following, companies will pay a massive premium to advertise on your platform, because I didn't know this until recently, but email advertising is the highest return on dollar for advertisers. So they'll pay a premium to get on newsletters. And if you have a very niche following, you can make a lot of money having premium subscribers pay for it. So for me personally, it's a combination of building up my own newsletter to the point that I would like to monetize with ads once I hit between 5 and 10,000 subscribers. I'm closing in on 4,000 right now. And then also I'm doing a lot of stuff on the writing side of Liquidity and helping him and Mark Moran build that brand up, because, they've turned a meme page into a viable business, and it's very cool to be able to participate in that. And on top of that, really just whatever other opportunities from writing like come up, I'd be interested in. That could be ghostwriting, copywriting, but as my Twitter following grows and newsletter grows, I've had more and more people reach out to me just to connect. And it's hard to map out what exactly that's going to look like 5 or 10 years from now, because it's always changing. But for this year specifically, I would like to hit 25,000 newsletter subscribers and make $100,000 in revenue just from writing. And I think I'm on pace to do both of those.
To jump in real quick, one question that I get all the time, it may actually be great for Brian to jump in as well, but newsletters and writers always reach out to me asking about how big does my list need to be before I can start monetizing via ads. I know it varies, and it varies a lot based on the audience type, how niche the content is, but curious like how you came about that 5,000 number, and curious if Brian has any additional thoughts based on what he's seen.
Brian basically helped me come up with the 5,000 number, so I'll let him take this one.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that what I would say is that there's no specific number, right? I think it really depends, and I think Jack, you touched on it. It depends on like who your audience is, what your niche is, and the value that that you're providing to the audience. If you could look at it in a way where you're just peaking one to many. So if you have 3 or 4 people on your newsletter list that are all influential people that give you money, you only need 1 or 2 people to be on your email list to make money, right? I think what we really have seen is, and zooming out, is it down at least specifically on the ads. You look at things on a kind of a CPM basis. Really, what are brands willing to pay for different categories? Google puts out a kind of a cost per click by category, and it ranges from everything from finance and lawyer services and financial services all the way down to things like advertising soap, right? So brands are willing to pay more money for things like financial services, investing, insurance, mortgages, because the value of that audience is much higher compared to what Unilever on the or Dove soap would be willing to pay to reach consumers. So Jack, and through our conversations, and also based on what we see coming through on the exec sum side, it's safe to say that there's a lot of common advertisers with where we're seeing the rates play out in financial services, and based on the rates that we see and the clicks and what brands are willing to pay. For Jack's ambition, writing a free email newsletter without having a paid subscription feature, roughly about 5 to 10,000 is kind of where the sweet spot is for a brand to actually like want to raise their hand and say, I want to advertise directly with you. And I think that's kind of the sweet spot. But yeah, it all depends on the brand. You know, we have some newsletters that we find that they have, you know, couple thousand people and they're getting a couple $1,000s in email, but it's because that email address list is filled with accredited investors that are eager to hear about, you know, and invest their money into new opportunities, and brands are willing to pay up for that. So it really depends.
Good points there, Brian. Appreciate you sharing that. Tyler, I went ahead and I pinned up top also in the meantime if people want to take a look, if they want to see some of Jack's work that is now pinned up top. So feel free to point into there if you want to go for that. In addition, there's a little bit of stuff on Beehive as well. So again, Tyler, Tyler, I think it would be good for you to give a few minutes of background on yourself as well, just because I think that's pretty important to the whole Beehive conversation, everything that's going on here.
Sure. So yeah, I guess to start it off and give additional context, about 4.5 years ago, I joined Morning Brew. See a few Morning Brew peeps in here as well. But joined Morning Brew as the second employee back in 2017, kind of in a flex role between product engineering and growth. What that led to was building out the email templates, the referral program, the website, built like a custom CMS for the content team to actually create the emails, built an ad operations platform with a few other engineers who are also both my co-founders in here as well, to help manage the inventory of ads, place them in newsletters, and then also just report back on the metrics to our advertising partners. So in summary, it was like in the build versus buy debate, we built almost everything in-house outside of the ESP that we use, which was MailChimp, and then Campaign Monitor, and then Sailthrough. So had a host of like custom built tech that we were using to really fuel the growth of the newsletter. When I joined, I think it was 50,000 email subscribers. I left at 2.5 million. And I think we had 3 or 4 additional lists ranging from emerging tech, retail, marketing. And one of the great things about email is it's a direct line of communication to your readers. And we would receive dozens, if not hundreds of requests every week asking about what tech we're using for the referral program, what CMS are we using to create the content. And of course, all of our readers are hoping for some third party off the shelf solution to say, oh, we use this referral program, you can sign up here. But the truth is, it was all custom built. So we couldn't actually lend that tech to them. And that's where I really started to realize that there was an opportunity in the market for the different tech solutions that were out there. There was a void in what these companies were offering from what these newsletters needed to really scale and monetize. So that was kind of like the real first opportunity of having the experience to really build that tech, see what it takes, what data were we collecting that was extremely useful, what were the different flexibility and customizations allowed in the newsletter and the website to attribute subscribers and really help us scale and grow. And having that experience and just seeing the different players in the space raise absurd valuations for what I see as decent technology, I figured there was an opportunity there to kind of be tech first, scale with a engineering first mindset, hiring really talented engineers and building a solution that I think fills a pretty large void in the market and something that Jack has been able to take advantage of and scale his newsletter to date.
Well said. Perfect. Okay, we got a couple other people in here that I want to bring to the conversation, whether that's asking, a question to Jack, giving an insight on what's going on here. I do see the Beehive account as well is in the audience. That's good to see. So let's get into it. First off, Iman, we got you up here. Would love to give you a couple of minutes here if there's anything that you wanted to ask or put out into the space.
Yeah, for sure. So I've read like a lot of your work, Jack, and I helped put together the Creator Spotlight blog. Something that's really, really interesting to me is like you're so young and you talk a lot about like career development and like you said, like the psychology and the way that we think. Do you have any advice on somebody that's like very, very new, starting like if I just decided to like start a newsletter today, what those first steps would be and like any, I guess like advice you would give to other young people that are like trying to get into this space?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, regardless of what topic or area that you want to write about, you have to be willing to do it for at least 5 or 6 months, once or twice a week, and expect no real feedback. Mine got accelerated a little bit just because Liquidity and a couple of other bigger accounts. Nick Maggiuli is another guy who's a writer with a big following who saw my stuff early, and they shared some of my stuff, which helped. But it was about 4 months of writing before anybody really saw anything I was doing. And if you're writing, 2 pieces a week, that's like close to 40 articles with very little feedback. And I think something about writing that people don't realize is, if like if your writing isn't great, people aren't going to tell you that it sucks. Like, they just won't tell you anything. And then if it's really good and you just don't have that big of an audience yet, you also get very little feedback. So you just have to be willing to, like, I guess, have the perseverance to keep doing it over and over and over again, and then share it as much as possible. Like, I feel like I'm oversharing sometimes in how much I post on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, telling my friends. But when everybody has a 6-second attention span and there's constantly millions of things being posted on social media, it's very easy for your stuff to just get missed. And it's not that people want to ignore it, they just won't see it. So the biggest thing is just being able to put out content consistently week after week for several months with minimal feedback. And over time, like, that audience does come. It's just, you just have to keep doing it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. When did you start like doing it like full time? You said you quit your job recently or in August, I think. So when did you decide to like take it on full time and like start sharing and I guess like not caring so much about what everyone thought?
Yeah, so I started writing at a cadence of about twice a week back in June, and then about 2 months in, that was when I quit my job. But I wasn't making any money from writing at that point. But I had enough money saved up that I basically had over a year of runway, and I was and still tentatively am planning on going. I got accepted to a business school at Columbia University, so that was kind of a fallback where I basically gave myself a year and I had enough money to make it a year where I was just going to write as much stuff as possible and then see where I was in August. Um, so I think that there's a fine line where when people want to go all in on some sort of creative venture, like, they want to jump headfirst into it, but you have to make sure you're financially secure enough that you have enough time to do that. Like, if I didn't have a lot of money saved up, I couldn't have just dove headfirst into writing. I would have run out of money. Um, so there was about a 2 month overlap. But for anybody getting started, like, I wouldn't quit your day job immediately to start writing. Like, keep them going simultaneously as long as possible.
That makes sense. I guess I won't tell Tyler that I quit just yet.
Wow, tough scene.
And let's take that and move on to a question from Jonathan.
Hey, thank you for letting me speak here. Jack, first, I just want to say, huge fan. Love what you're doing with the newsletter. Try to read dang near every one of them. But it's been super fun to watch you progress as a writer, just following your stuff. And I was curious, as your success and your platform started to balloon, as you said, you got shares from some larger accounts and the number of readers started to grow. What did you feel like you did to capitalize on that positive momentum to continue to grow your audience and continue to grow your readership?
I think the biggest thing was I started finding out how to write stuff that both interested me and appealed or applied to what people with bigger audiences were following. Like, it wasn't really an accident that guys like Nick Maggiuli and then Packy McCormick and some of them saw and shared my stuff. Like, I would look at and try to, like, digest, okay, these guys with hundreds of thousands of followers, what are they sharing? What are they writing about? What are they doing? And if there was ever an opportunity to reply to one of their tweets or message them about something that I wrote that directly related to their stuff, I would send it. Like, for example, Packy McCormick back in November, one of his friends texted him saying, I have this investment thesis that you should just put your money in the 5 dumbest things possible and you would make bank, because GameStop and these NFTs and all this stuff had blown up. So I deleted the article that I was working on and just wrote one called like the 5 dumbest ways you could have gotten rich in 2021. And then I like replied to him and said, "Hey, I actually wrote about this." He thought it was hysterical, shared it, 200 new followers, and somebody from MarketWatch picked it up. Then Josh Brown and Michael Batnick and some of those guys saw it, and then it just took off. So in my head, it's like a Venn diagram of what I want to write about, what people with big audiences would care about enough to share, and stuff that you can write that fits that sweet spot is the kind of best way to supercharge your growth early.
Awesome. So if I may, just a quick follow-up to that. So you really start from a place of what you're interested in, what you're looking at, what you want to talk about, and then kind of back that in to what the larger audience may or may not be looking for, yeah?
Yeah, that's correct. I think that most of the stuff I write about like applies pretty broadly to most people. Like money, for example, is something that pretty much everybody cares about. But yeah, you just got to have your finger on the pulse of what you see on Twitter. And when something's kind of like heating up, it makes a good thing to write about. And another thing is I try to make 90% of my stuff pretty timeless. Like you could read it now or 5 years from now and it's still relevant. But the other 10% of things, like something about meme stocks or something like that, might gain a lot more traction now. They could help bring more subscribers in now that would then stick around for the more permanent stuff.
Awesome. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Great question, Jonathan. Chad we just missed him. Okay, Chad was on, and he actually sent me a question to ask, and it's a pretty good one. But I'll throw it over to Eric first, who's been hanging out with us here, and see what question they have.
Yo, what's up? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, so just a little brief bio. My name is Eric. I'm a 14-year-old developer and founder and angel investor based in Indiana. A few KPIs: ran a hackathon with the son of Elon Musk, one of the biggest hackathons out there, and then scaled platforms to about 46,000 people on our wait list. That got acquired about 6 months ago, and then now I'm building Aviato, which we're basically synchronizing this whole entire application process for VC funds. So one of my questions was, I saw your Twitter account, and I've been a big fan of Jack's Twitter account, and I don't know how you shitpost this well. So what's your trick to shitposting?
Honestly, I just kind of got a feel for it from seeing guys like Liquidity and then like John W. Rich and some of those guys. Like I'm friends with both of them, and you just see the stuff that would make me laugh. I wanted to start writing similar stuff. And then something that I really didn't like that much was the amount of threads that started coming, the mental models and, like the stuff that looked very insightful, but it might not actually be that insightful. And in my head, I was thinking, how can I turn this on its head and turn a thread into a shit post? And I've started doing it on Twitter. I shit post on LinkedIn all the time because it's such a narrative violation having a shit post on the Humble Brag site. It was kind of like taking the normal shitpost meme stuff that's funny and then using it in like taking those like writing methods that used to be for more serious stuff and turning those into shitpost. So, and it works out well because it stands out because it's different. I think in general, it's just finding something different that really catches people's attention.
Nice. Yeah. So a quick follow on to that, so how do you balance this out, right? All of my tweets are essentially shit posts, and then everything I kind of do is also a shit post. We're building a toilet plunger flamethrowing company that's like the pooping company, and we have Johnny Sins endorsing it, but it's sort of like a massive shit post too. So how do you balance shit posting and actually providing value?
I haven't really thought about it that much about how to do it intentionally. It's really just, I have my cadence of for my actual newsletter, I try to put something out every Monday morning and Thursday morning. And then I have a crippling Twitter addiction. I probably spend 7 hours a day on Twitter. So if I think of something fairly insightful that I want to share, then I'll do it. I wrote a thread about blowing 120 grand in a day. I figured with a lot of people who are, swinging crypto and pictures of monkeys and stuff right now for millions of dollars, it was probably a timely thread. But sometimes I'll think of something hysterical and just run with it. I made a thread relating Call of Duty Warzone to the Ukraine thing. This is before the invasion happened. obviously. But really, just if I think of something and I think it's funny, I write it. If I think of something and I think it's useful, I write it. There's no real calculated timing to all the tweets.
Nice. Sounds good.
Awesome stuff. So we're about halfway through here, and we have more people that are requesting. So we'll continue to bring up and give people questions one more time. Big shout out to Jack for being up here with us. There's a new era here of writing that's going on with the way that content is distributed on the internet through so many different ways. And we need people to come in and write like this, but we also need people to teach them and show the way, right? Understand how to monetize it, understand how to grow an audience. And that's what people like Jack are doing, and Tyler as well with the Beehive team. So we got the Beehive account up here. I pinned a few tweets up top so you can see Jack's latest article. You can see the Beehive account. But what you'll see with Beehive is essentially a couple of things. One, I know a lot of people on Twitter, they use review because it's basically built into Twitter. But Beehive has essentially allowed you to integrate directly into that. So even if you're worried, hey, I'm not going to get as many signups, you can get those directly through Twitter onto your Beehive and basically just have it transfer over. In addition, they offer promotional offers and free tries. You can content, improve subscribers import, and a bunch more. They have public APIs, they have email engagement, and a ton. And obviously, the team is accessible because we literally have the creator right here on Twitter Spaces, as well as one of the writers offering answers and content and stuff like that open. So if you haven't already checked out the Beehive account that is up here, as well as Tyler and Jack, I recommend going ahead, taking a look, clicking into some links, throwing them some follows. You're going to be seeing more of their content. Creators like Ramp Capital, Liquidity, and a bunch more, Jack, of course, are using these platforms in order to distribute their content. And I think that says a lot. So I want to keep it rolling. We have a couple more people that we're requesting. Happy to bring them up if they want to re-request. Tyler, is there anything you want to add on to what I just put out there?
Yeah, I actually just wanted to double click on that one thing that you touched on. One, to give a huge shout out to our CTO, Andrew, who's somewhere in this space. He is the one who came up with Pollinate, which is the tool that we built to integrate with Twitter and the subscribe embed functionality that's in my profile, Jack's profile, and sending those subscribers very seamlessly over to Beehive. That's something that we saw from a lot of users who wanted to use Review simply because they had that Twitter integration functionality. And so we built a tool completely free. You don't need to use Zapier. You don't need to put in your credit card. You can basically sign up to use Review, add the subscribe functionality and embed into your profile like I have at the top of mine. And then you can sync it with not just Beehive, but also MailChimp, ConvertKit, and a few other platforms. We obviously prefer you use Beehive, but it is open and it is free. So just wanted to give a quick shout out to Andrew for coming up with that brilliant idea, and then let everyone else know in the space that that's available. So if that's a reason you've been considering Review, maybe it's a reason you should consider Beehive instead.
Really good stuff there. Thank you, Tyler. And if anyone else in the audience, again, I have more questions and I'm happy to ask them, but if you want to request, feel free to do that. And we're happy to bring you up here. Again, if you want to learn about writing, how to monetize your writing, how to connect with people through the internet, this is the right space for you to be in. So, Jack, a question which my friend Chad sent over to me, he was in here for a minute. He had to run to a meeting, but I thought it was a good one, was if someone was starting out right now, just trying to create content online and make that their full-time supporting job, what would you tell them?
I would say be very conservative, one, with like how quickly you want to make it your full-time job, just because it's tough to make money writing initially. You need to figure out the first thing to figure out is, do you want to do it through subscriptions or through ad revenue? If you want to do, I'm assuming a newsletter specifically. If you want to do subscriptions, you really need to have a super niche thing that you write about that people are willing to pay for. Like Edwin Dorsey has one called The Bear Cave, where he does extensive short reports on companies, and people pay money for that. Exec Sum with Liquidity is a very broad, like market recap, memes, mergers and acquisitions, but we have 115,000 plus readers that use it as like a curated information source. So when you figure out one of those two, it's just writing and writing and writing until your audience gets to that point that you can make money off of it. But I wouldn't quit to go full time with writing until you have sustainable money coming from that. Because if your runway runs out, then you're having to balance finding another job while trying to keep the writing thing going, and it would just be very tough to do.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Having that runway is super, super important. Brian, You've been chilling. Any questions that come to your mind?
Hey guys, so yeah, no, this has all been great, and thank you, Gav, for hosting all of us. Something that I wanted to mention, which I think is kind of funny and important, is email as a medium is all of a sudden cool again. Like email is like has been around since basically like the start of the internet, or at least the modern internet, and I think it's been really interesting to watch how to this day, we're talking about building email newsletter lists. Like this is something that has been happening since the .com era, and I think it just, as you think about, all of the platforms and opportunities to focus your time as a creator on, email is really that one constant that has been around through all of the evolutions of like the internet. And I think when we talk about, the risk and opportunity that creators have on platforms like Twitter to diversify their audience across other platforms, email is really the direct line to a creator. Obviously, you have to worry about things like open rate and deliverability, which the Beehive team is particularly good with. But this is how you manage your platform risk at any given time. Formerly Jack, but Twitter can pull the plug on an account. We've seen it happen on Twitter a lot. Obviously, Liquidity, he's got a massive following on Instagram. God forbid Zuck decides to pull the plug. Email is still this very valuable direct connection with the audience. And I think, I guess, Jack, could you talk, a little bit about, you're focusing a lot of your energy on Twitter. How are you seeing like a viral tweet or a shit post thread lead to more subscribers? Does it lead to more subscribers? What on Twitter is working for you to really help you drive the top of funnel from Twitter into an email subscriber?
I think a broad part of it is just having a bigger Twitter following automatically has more eyeballs that will see when you share a newsletter. Like I've gone from 1,000 to over 5,000 Twitter followers in the last few months, and that's 5 times as many people who might see like my newsletter whenever I post it, especially because I post a good bit about like finance and money related stuff. Half of it's shit post, half of it's real, but it's all within that same sphere. But if I have a thread that's really going off and it's hitting like 100, 200, 500,000 impressions, I might add a tweet at the bottom of the thread with a link to like a newsletter that I've written that's somewhat relevant to the thread. Like the one that I put about losing $120,000 in a day, it hit like 600,000 impressions, I think. So a few hours after I posted it and it was moving, I linked a piece that I wrote about opportunity costs to the bottom of that. And that piece got another 5,000 impressions or whatever. So it's like constantly building a bigger audience that will over time funnel to the newsletter, and then on specific viral pieces, linking a newsletter directly to that thread to capture the hype.
Jack, I pinned, or it looks like Brian might have got it moved down. I also see Hayel Harry if you want to pop up, if you want to chat at all. Okay, so I'm reading through one of your more recent articles, which you pinned up top. I think it's really fascinating. It was being right for the wrong reasons. And you're talking about being in a casino and playing, roulette and lessons learned from it. Where do you come up with the ideas for this content, right? And how often are you publishing? And, this is something which I personally, like, I actually had this conversation with Tyler. So I write a newsletter, but like, I just, long form content low key scares me, writing it a little bit, and especially committing to writing it on a regular basis. And so my newsletters, it's a different style. I basically highlight top 10 tweets of the week from Twitter because I spend like 40 to 60 hours on here. So that's what worked for me. But you're going down these rabbit holes with all these like personal, stories and leading them into topics and then bringing in Morgan Housel and all this. So where does it come from?
I think that I think I have, I don't want to say unlimited things to pull from my life, but I think storytelling is somewhat of an art where, yeah, I heard everything.
Yeah, you're good.
But anyway, I think that storytelling is kind of an art where I can take very simple events that happen from like when I played college football. It could be like a normal practice and pull some example from that of like getting yelled at by a coach,
right.
something that happened every day.
For a second, I can hear people. I'm going to switch off the Wi-Fi.
Okay, can you hear me? Like, is mine coming through fine?
Yeah, you're good, Jack.
Okay, cool. Anyway, it's I've just overriding more and more and more. It's not that I have a million crazy experiences, but I've gotten better at turning very
Tyler,
regular
can you hear me?
experiences. Yeah, yeah, we can hear you fine.
Sorry. Okay,
No,
I'm
you're good,
back
man.
in. Apologies. I just had like my Wi-Fi just flip shift for like 15 seconds, so sorry about that. But yeah, floor's all yours.
Anyway, I was just saying that like it's not about having like a million different crazy experiences to pull from, but being able to turn like regular everyday occurrences into something that you can make a lesson. Like being a 19-year-old losing some money at a roulette table. Like every 19-year-old or 20-year-old, 21-year-old that's been to a casino probably lost money playing some game. But then being able to turn that into a broader lesson of investors making false correlations and losing money off of it is where the key is. So I've just gotten better and better with that over time. And you mentioned Morgan Housel. So like Morgan and I follow each other on Twitter now, and his book Psychology of Money I think is the best finance book I've ever read because every chapter is a story from his life or from history that he turned into a broader financial concept. And that's where I really get a lot of my writing style from him. It's when you have a personable story, people relate to it more, and then building the bridge from that story to a bigger, broader lesson that applies to millions of people is where the magic happens. Um, so yeah, that's the key to it. So it's not finding inspiration or a bunch of crazy stuff. It's just building the bridge between common things into broader lessons.
Jack, is there a writer that you look up to or emulate? Because when I read your content, someone comes to mind for me, but I'm curious if there's someone that you kind of idolize a bit or kind of follow their styles.
So I would say that it's kind of three different riders. Morgan Housel would probably be the biggest one, but if you've noticed like the illustrations and stuff I do, I got those from Tim Urban and his Wait But Why blog. Tim does like stick figure art and stuff, and the whole using like shitty drawings to convey bigger pictures I thought was interesting. It's pretty memorable. And then Matt Levine from Bloomberg, I like his like dry sense of humor, and I'll sometimes incorporate similar writing style in mine. So Levine, Housel, and then Tim Urban.
Yeah, Tim Urban's the one that came to mind, mostly, I guess,
Yeah,
from the drawings.
yeah,
Waipa Y is by far one of my favorite. He's not as active. I think he's working on a book, but some of his older posts are absolute gold mines. Um,
yeah. Tim's great.
to jump into something a bit more tactically, you mentioned that your goal for 2022 is 25,000 subscribers. Obviously, us and the Beehive team is doing everything we can to provide you like the data and the tools to help you scale. That being said, as a platform, we can't just gift every writer thousands and thousands of subscribers. Like there's actual work that goes in behind that. Curious to hear your strategy of how you've achieved success thus far, and then a little bit more tactically what your game plan is moving forward to scale to 25,000 subscribers.
So a big thing that I've done is align myself with people with bigger audiences than me that also like my work. So for example, liquidity. It's not like I plug something I write in every day's exact sum, but we have a section called exec picks where we either have sometimes sponsored advertisements and sometimes just recommendations of like articles that we enjoyed reading that week, YouTube videos, whatever. And if I have a good piece that's somewhat relevant to what's going on or relevant to finance, I'll plug it there, and I've gotten some readers from that. There's a bigger writer named his newsletter is called Alpha Letter, and has 50,000 subscribers, and he pays me to cross post an article on his thing usually every Wednesday or Thursday, and like I get like my name credited and my Beehive newsletter linked to that. So right there, that's 165,000 readers that are indirectly exposed to my stuff through them, and then constantly interacting with like Nick Nagiuli, Morgan Housel, these finance writers with really big followings. I just kind of try to feed off of their audiences while building mine. So that's been the biggest thing right now, just because people that follow them are obviously interested in the stuff that I'm writing about. So it just keeps getting more and more eyeballs on my stuff.
I also would add to that. I think, Jack, you're talking, I think, a lot about not only writing, but also like you're your own marketer and growth, head of growth. I think, a lot of the tasks that you're talking about are marrying, writing together with promotion. How do you think about like how much time and energy you spend on writing versus promoting?
I would say that the writing is pretty specific. Like I'll sit down for like 4 or 5 hours a day and just start writing, and then the promoting is like I don't. It's not that I don't have a specific promotion or marketing or advertising tactic. I just have a lot of different things that I'm constantly doing, like the linking my stuff to Exact Summer Alpha Ladder or tweeting about stuff. I really think you can't overshare on the internet, and since Twitter is so conversational, it's become a great place for me to share stuff. Um, but I would say that it's a concentrated 4 hours a day or so writing, and then the rest of the day just sporadically whenever I see an opportunity to put anything that could somewhat promote my stuff on Twitter, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's great. I think like just a note, I think earlier in the conversation you mentioned that you try to aim to have 90% of your content evergreen, 10% more topical. And a saying that we tell a lot of people is if you're a creator or a producer or anybody that is creating content, make it once, sell it 10, 20, 100 times. And selling it means not only trying to monetize it, but like promoting it. There might be a Twitter thread that goes viral 3 weeks after one of your posts that you published a couple weeks before, plugging it in there. That's always a way where you're getting, you're constantly seeing long value out of the long tail of your content, and keeping it fresh and topical. So yeah, man, it's exciting to see you and hear about all the different tactics that you're using.
And
Yeah, man, appreciate that.
I was going to say, if anyone from the audience has any questions for Jack or myself or any of the other speakers, feel free to request to speak and get some more voices up here. But while we're waiting on additional questions, another one of your 2022 goals is 6 figures in revenue. I was just curious, obviously advertising is a route that a lot of newsletters go. Premium subscriptions are another route. Are those kind of like the low-hanging fruit that you were thinking about, or even considering premium subscriptions at all? And then are there any other kind of like out of the box types of monetization strategies that you're evaluating sometime this year or beyond?
Yeah, so for me, I don't plan on doing a subscription-based model, at least not anytime soon on my writing. Now, this isn't something that I have seriously thought about doing, but Mario Gabriel writes a newsletter called The Generalist, and I believe he made his newsletter free, but has like a more I guess like high level community that people can pay a subscription to join where they can interact with him on like a personal level. That's something I've thought about. I don't have plans to roll out, but I do plan on monetizing with ads this year, which is where a lot of that will come from. Obviously, like Lit pays me some for like the newsletter stuff I do with him, and I get certain revenue cuts off of some of that stuff. And then cross posting to the Alpha Ladder, I get paid $250, $300 a week doing that. So it's kind of all those things, and then different one-off projects. Like people that have read some of my stuff have like pitched me like, "Hey, I'll pay you $1,000 on like a one-off project to write this or that for me." Like I had a guy working for a decent-sized VC firm hit me up about something like that. I can't really go into the details on it, but anyway, as you build a bigger and bigger audience, a lot of these one-off opportunities come up, and then as you get a bigger audience, you get pricing power. Like $1,000 now might be $5,000 in 4 months. So it's a lot of different things kind of coming together.
Yeah, for sure. I believe Liam, did you have a question?
Yeah, what's up? Thanks, Tyler. Sorry if there's any background noise. Jack, nice to meet you. Got to shut out the bio. Made me spit out my coffee yesterday when I read it for the first time. I guess just a quick question for you as someone who's kind of in some of the content space myself. This question of like how much you consume versus how much you produce, and figuring out what that content diet looks like for you, so that you're not like over leveraging yourself on a bunch of the other good shit that's out there versus kind of being able to put out good product.
As far as the consuming side goes, I mean, I love just reading good stuff. So if I come across blog posts or anything like that on Twitter that seems like if the headline catches my eye, I'll read it. I don't really have like a specific time of I'm trying to consume 50%, right, 50%, or like 90 and 10%. So I guess I don't really have a great answer. It's just I'm pretty much always on Twitter because I'm like looking and seeing like kind of what's moving in the market, what people are talking about, looking at memes and stuff, and then just whenever an article or video or something catches my eye, I jump on it. Like the Lex Friedman interview with Mark Zuckerberg, for example, last week. That was something that I thought was very interesting. But I don't really have like a set consumption time. Also, for those curious, Liam was talking about my bio. I have my pronouns in my bio, we, them, boys. So, yeah, anyway, I think it's very important for people to know what to refer to you as.
You are them boys.
Very important. I think we also have a question from this M. Minkin guy. I think he's the newest investor at the Turning Group.
Yeah, so interested to hear, like, how do you think about, you obviously have this, like, great top of funnel reach, like, really enjoyable content. I think speaks to a lot of people in general. Like, how do you think about, like, channeling that funnel and, like, monetizing more, like, as like a bottom of the funnel play when you think about Lit Capital in general? Like, is it, like, more subscriptions? Is there, like, an element of commerce? Is it marketplace for something? Like, how do you think about that? Do you see opportunities there, or is this purely just a media entity?
Are you talking about with Lit Capital specifically, or with like my Young Money stuff?
I mean, could be both. Like, however you think about either.
With me personally, strictly riding, and then with Lit, like while I'm only involved on the riding aspect of him and Mark have built it into like a pretty big enterprise between merchandise, newsletter, riding, and then they have a podcast as well. Big Swinging Decks, highly recommend it if you haven't listened. So like over time with them, I might get more involved in some of the other stuff through that. But on mine personally, just riding. There is one medium though that I think is interesting. It's actually so Morgan Housel, when he wrote The Psychology of Money, that book was actually a collection of his 15 best blog posts that he wrote on Motley Fool and Wall Street Journal over the years. And at some point in the future, I do plan on turning some of my posts into a book because it works. And once my audience hits, say, 100,000 followers, you kind of have your own like built-in marketing and advertising through Twitter and social media. So while still writing, that would take it from digital writing to a physical book. But that probably won't be for a couple of years.
Makes sense. Like a horizontal expansion of content.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Nice.
One thing that I think is super interesting is I forgot who I was talking to, but they were consulting on behalf of this guy who has a YouTube channel, a few 100,000 subscribers, about surfing. And they were trying to find additional ways to monetize. I think he was only making money off of YouTube auto-generated ads, like a few $1,000s a month. And my natural like internet brain goes like newsletter, podcast. But once you own the audience, he actually suggested creating an in real life surf camp. And I think he did $500,000 in revenue by launching like 2 or 3 sessions of surf camps per year. But just kind of like the thinking outside of the box beyond just email, newsletter, podcast, even premium subscriptions. I just found like once you own that audience and have that top of funnel, there's so many out of the box ways to monetize that I just think are really interesting. And like understanding your audience and the niche that you're operating in can present a lot of pretty interesting opportunities to scale that beyond just, the typical newsletter, sponsorship ad, or premium subscriptions.
Right. And especially when you're in a niche industry like that, it's like, think about just everything that your audience spends money on related to that activity or interest. If it's something else, it's kind of like the right way to think about it, I think.
Wolf, what do you got? I think we got 3 minutes left, so I don't know if you have anything to put out.
Yeah, well, I see Brian going up and down like a roller coaster over here. I think we got him back up for a minute. Jonathan, I saw you were down and then you re-requested when we asked for speakers. Did you have another question? Can you hear me, Tyler?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Not hearing from Jonathan. All right. We'll see if we got one more question here.
We got one more. Chairman. Let's get him up here.
All right. Let's see if we got this going. Chairman, did you have a question for Jack? Going once. Sometimes it takes people a minute to connect.
Chairman, you have the floor. You're just muted.
Yeah, it's all good. Definitely sometimes.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, there we go. We got Jonathan. What's up, Jonathan?
Awesome. Yeah, just one final question. If this had gotten answered, I apologize. I was in and out a little bit. But as far as the writing process goes, is there a specific process that you follow, or is it just kind of as things that you're consuming content wise come to you and you find interesting, you kind of mentioned when the 5 dumbest ways to make money, you just kind of dropped everything and just kind of latched onto that topic. Is that how a lot of your writings originate, or do you just have like you're just constantly creating things, and as topics become a little bit more relevant, you have like almost like a pipeline of things that you could either push out immediately or get close to pushing out because you've already got it in the hopper, or does it look something different than that?
So I have about 15 or so drafts that are like half baked, like headline, a few bullet points so I don't forget about them in Beehive right now. And then typically what I do is like I'll start working on a Monday piece on Friday, write it over the weekend, proofread it Sunday, put it out. But if at any point I have like a eureka moment or see something that just like goes off my head, like that's a better thing to write about, I'll push the other thing to the side and start writing on the new thing. And typically that only happens if it's one of those more timely pieces, like the thing with Packy and the 5 dumbest ways you could have made money. The benefit of writing mainly timeless pieces is that I could have an idea now and write it 3 months from now and it's still relevant. But I get in the cadence of like over the weekend writing a Monday piece and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday writing a Thursday piece, and usually just developing in one of the prior drafts unless something that seems better pops up in my head. But whenever I'm just walking around like throughout the day, I have these random ideas of, oh, that's a good idea to write about, and I'll text myself and say, write about this later. Like with the Ukraine-Russia thing, it just hit me like we feel like it's the end of the world right now, but what's kind of the historical precedence of this stuff? And I just texted myself to make a note of that later. And then you go back and see that there's been so many pandemics and wars and stuff that it's kind of the norm. As much as it sucks to say, like what's going on is relatively normal historically. We just don't feel that way. That was just a spur of the moment thing. Texted myself about it, and then so I had a reminder to write it later.
Good stuff. Thank
Yeah,
you,
that's
Jack.
great. I appreciate the insight. I know I myself have about a dozen different half baked ideas sitting in the drafts folder just waiting to be finished. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I was going to say too, real quick, because I know we're short on time, but just a couple of, I guess, like writing tips or stuff that I've figured out, because I imagine some people in here probably write or would like to start writing too. As far as like kind of, I think finding your voice as a writer is important, and it took me several months to do that. But in my opinion, the best way to do it is find writers that you really enjoy and start emulating their stuff and then putting your own spin on it from there. Like, I very much enjoyed like Tim Urban and Morgan Housel's stuff, and I kind of mirrored mine off of theirs and have since deviated to find my own voice from that. But if you start with stuff you like, it's like playing sports. Emulate people who are really, really good, and you'll probably get better at it. And then as far as the actual writing process, I think people think about it like writing A to Z, beginning to end. But in my experience, it's puking words all over the page and then going back and connecting it. It's not like making a puzzle where you do the edge pieces first and then you go through. Like, it's very sporadic, just idea after idea, and then you figure out how to fit it together afterwards. So I don't think people should write the way that you're probably taught to write in school. It's just not that effective.
That's why I got to come on Spaces and learn. Better
That's
than
right.
school.
That's right.
Okay, one more time, Chairman. I'll see if you can hear us, and if not, I will. Chairman? Okay, doesn't seem like they're on here, so I'll go ahead and just remove them. And with that, I think we're going to go into just closing comments, everyone, so stick around. We got some more stuff we want to put out there. One more time, if anybody hasn't had the chance to check it out, we have 3 pinned tweets up top. The first one is the recent article that Jack put out. I mean, it's a quick read. It's great. I read it during this, really enjoyed it. Talking about, making decisions for the wrong or right reasons. And then there's 2 other pinned tweets up there. One goes over, basically, I'll just actually cut it down to one. Basically, just going over what Beehive offers. And so if anyone's in the audience and you've been thinking about starting a newsletter, this is something you want to pursue, you want to maybe add a little bit of supplemental income or build an audience, these are the right people to be talking to. So I know that Jack, he's great on here anytime that he has. If you send a kindly worded message and you want to connect with him and maybe say, hey, I was in that space and I'm trying to learn how to become a better writer or something along those lines, that would be a great way to connect. Tyler is, your go-to guy for Beehive, co-founder and CEO over at Beehive, worked at Morning Brew, a very, popular newsletter name in the area, as well as Google. And of course, we have Iman from the Beehive team as well, and Brian running it up at Bullish. So again, great follows. And if this is an area that you're trying to learn more about and build upon, you've come to the right place. So we'll go around, just give everybody a couple minutes on any other comments or anything else that they want to throw out on here, and then we'll wrap it up from there. But we'll be doing these weekly. I think next week we're going to do it at 6 p.m. versus 7 p.m., but felt like this time was pretty good. We're going to have some big guests continuing to come on this. Just had to do it a little bit later today because I was getting off a plane. But I will throw it over to Brian first for any closing thoughts or remarks or any other pieces you want to put into this one.
Thank you, Gab, for hosting. Congratulations, Jack, on your success YOLOing, day trading, and then losing it, and then pivoting it into a writing career. I wish you all the luck, and I'm excited to see your growth and watch you hit all your goals. So, yeah, everybody should go to Jack's profile, shoot him a follow, and also subscribe to his newsletter, in addition to Wolf and Tyler and the Beehive team. But thanks for having me.
Pleasure having you on, Brian. Looking forward to our next chat. All right, let's bring it back to Iman. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, so we'll be doing this every Wednesday, highlighting a new creator. So also, if there's any writers in our audience that are not on Beehive, take Jack's advice, slide in my DMs, and I'll I'll hook you up. So, yeah.
Perfect. Definitely reach out to her as well. Okay. Jack, anything else you want to add to this? And this has been great. Really appreciate you coming on and adding a lot of insight. I think this is an area that, as you pointed out, is severely lacking in education, especially from schools.
Yeah, first of all, thanks again, Wolf, for having me, and then the whole Beehive team for picking me to do this. This has been awesome. For anybody out there interested in writing, don't hesitate to reach out to me, or really anybody that you want to talk to. It's the best asymmetrical bet you can take is just messaging somebody on Twitter saying, "Hey, I like your stuff," and just introducing yourself. It's about as low risk, high reward as you can get. So if you guys have any follow-up questions, feel free to message me or anybody else on here.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. We could do a whole space on building connections on Twitter. I did one actually last week that seemed to go over really well. I was doing it mostly for NFT and creator connections, but absolutely there's an art to sliding into DMs, and be happy to cover that on one of these spaces with you, Tyler, if you would like to. And speaking of Tyler, let's bring it over to you for any closing thoughts.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks, Gav, for hosting. This has been a ton of fun. I'll just end with what we've seen on Beehive and just across the creator economy at large is there's a lot of really talented writers and creators out there that are monetizing and scaling in very interesting ways. And so our goal at Beehive is just to build the best platform to facilitate, make it easier for you to monetize and scale however it is for your content. So we're going to be doing these every week, highlighting a ton of different creators, different content types, all different stages from just starting out to 100,000 plus subscribers and beyond. So tune in 6 p.m. Wednesdays, Eastern time. And if you're considering a newsletter, as Iman said, slide into our DMs, reach out, sign up for Beehive. Always happy to answer questions and help out. And if you're interested in being featured in an upcoming Twitter Spaces, let me know as well, and we can slot you into the calendar.
Perfect. Yes. And for people that are interested in future weeks and asking questions, we'll continue to have some really intellectual speakers up here that you can have to ask your questions to. And I also just went ahead and retweeted that last Beehive post. Recommend everyone check that out. That'll be the last one that's on my page. Cool. Really enjoyed this as well. Looking forward to running it back in future weeks. Tyler, anything else you want to add on, or are you good to go?
No, I think that's it. I just hope everyone found that insightful. Jack dropped a lot of knowledge. We're going to actually recap some of his top insights and tweet it from our account. So if you don't already follow either me or Iman or the Beehive account, please do. And we'll continue to share insights, tips, tricks, strategies for growth and content from all of our content creators, and really start to compound this into a larger and larger audience and community. So thanks for joining.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. If you want more